All right, everyone. Again, welcome. Thank you for joining us for this special CACFP training. My name is Natalie Ostrander. I am a nutrition consultant based in the Denver metro area, and I'm also the training coordinator. This is the adult daycare training. We are going to go through some just general information first. So this is our contact information. This phone number on this slide is our main line number. So if you're not sure who to contact, or your main nutrition consultant or something is out of the office, you can always give this main line a call, and our great operations team will help direct you to where you need to go. We are also going to drop some links in the chat box here, just so that you guys can bookmark them for easy access. We are going to share our main Colorado CACFP website link, as well as the link to the CNP, the Colorado Nutrition Portal. That is where you access your applications and submit your claims. And then finally, we will also share a direct link to all of our team members' contact information. All right, so I'm going to do some introductions of our team. So this is our CACFP leadership team. Naomi Stenson is our director. Tanya O'Connor is our nutrition and compliance manager, and she is on the call today helping be my co-host. We also have Megan George Nichols, who oversees outreach and quality improvement in our branch. And we have Chrissy Nichols, who is finally back from her maternity leave, back on our team. She is our coach and liaison. And then this is our team of nutrition consultants. We are very blessed to have consultants represented in all areas of the state of Colorado. So again, my name is Natalie. I am the training coordinator. We also have Alicia. She is a regional nutrition consultant based in the southern part of Colorado in the San Luis Valley. We have Ari, based in the Denver metro area. Kelly Gates is another regional consultant based on the Western Slope. And finally, we have Amy Thurston. She is also a Denver-based nutrition consultant. And finally, we have some members of our support groups. So we have our fiscal unit. Currently, our fiscal administrator is still vacant. This was previously held by Mindy. So if you have any questions that you would typically direct to that person, you can direct them now to Alonzo, and he will help support you or get you to the best point of contact from there. If you have questions directly for Alonzo, you can reach out to him for any UEI, food service management contract, those type of fiscal needs. And finally, we have Katie Roby is our fiscal purchasing agent, and she helps oversee CACFP claims and one-time exceptions. So you may reach out to her directly for any of those fiscal needs. And last but not least, we have our operations unit. Julie is our branch operations supervisor. She's on the call waving to you guys. Thanks, Julie. And we also have Morgan Baker as a ops support specialist. They do so much for us behind the scenes. They help with our newsletter, our website, all kinds of Colorado Nutrition Portal applications and issues. And they also monitor the main line, so you'll probably be in touch with them quite a bit. All right, so now we want to learn more about who's in the room with us today. So take a moment to introduce yourselves. Please just type in the chat box, or if you would like to unmute and speak out to the group, we would love to hear from you directly. Please share your name, the name of your institution or center. Tell us kind of what your job title is, what particular aspects of CACFP you oversee, and one or two things that you're really hoping to learn from us today, so that we can make sure we're addressing those things that you're most curious about. All right, so I'm going to get the chat box open here so I can kind of see what we have going. All right. Hello to Leanne. I'm not sure. My brain is not working so great with words today.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Welcome. You're from Second Home, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Perfect. Welcome. We're glad to have you here. All right. So that's all I see going on in the chat box now. So if you need a moment, so on the bottom of your Zoom bar, oh, here we go. We got a couple more coming in. There's kind of like a speech bubble box that says chat. So you can just click on that and you can type to all of us. All right, so we have Michelle King here from King Adult Day Enrichment Center. Great. And then we have Jonathan, hello, from Happy Living. Does a little bit of everything. Yep, I understand. Linda Ross from Senior Daybreak Center, welcome. Hi, Katie Wagner from Wildwood. Hope you guys are still having fun up there in Wyoming if you're still up there. Okay, we have members from the other Second Home Community Center, BMH Corp, another Wildwood representative. Let's see, Alpine Adult Daycare. Excellent. Welcome, everyone. So continue to keep any questions that you have coming in the chat box. Tanya is here to help monitor that throughout this call. So if you have any questions, even if it's not directly related to exactly what we're going on in the specific slide, just drop your questions in the chat and we'll get them taken care of for you. Alrighty. Next slide. All right, so the reason we're all here today is to learn more about the Child and Adult Care Food Program for adult participants. So CACFP is a USDA program and it is administered in the state of Colorado by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, or CDPHE. Colorado supports both independent centers and sponsoring organizations that participate to enroll in CACFP programs. And the purpose of having the adult daycare component of CACFP is to provide nutrition support to enable elderly people and functionally impaired adults to remain in the community and avoid premature institutionalization. All participating institutions must meet nonprofit food service requirements. This means that organizations cannot make money by operating in the CACFP by making a profit from the reimbursement received, and all reimbursement should be used for food and food service management operations. We will discuss how to properly maintain documentation of all the record keeping requirements throughout this presentation, and the main goal of the CACFP is to provide high quality nutritious meals to people of all ages throughout Colorado. All right, so we're going to start with some of these specific requirements for adult daycare programs. So adult daycare centers are considered eligible institutions for reimbursement for serving meals to persons 60 years of age or older, or to functionally impaired persons in a non-residential group setting if they are under the age of 60. Eligible people include those who live within the community and or reside with family members or other caregivers that would benefit from respite when adult daycare services are available. Adult daycare facilities must be Medicaid certified, licensed, or approved by alternate federal, state, or local authorities to provide non-residential daycare services to functionally impaired adults or individuals 60 years of age or older. And this needs to be in a group setting outside of their home or a group living arrangement, and is not available to be held on a 24-hour basis. Persons who are institutionalized in facilities such as long-term care residential facilities or residences in which they receive 24-hour care are not eligible for the CACFP.
Natalie?
Yes.
We have a question in the chat box about whether the PowerPoint will be available after this.
Yep, I am happy to make this PowerPoint available, and I also have a document that has all of the links that Tanya is going to share throughout the presentation. I plan to share that out with you all as well, so you have all of the links at your fingertips. So thank you for that. All right, so next we're going to talk about plans of care. Plans of care for adult daycare centers are required if the center provides care for functionally impaired participants under the age of 60. The plan must demonstrate a center's ability to provide a variety of health, social, and supportive services for all of its enrolled participants. For CACFP purposes, centers do not need an individual plan of care for participating adults over the age of 60. All right, so adult daycare centers have the same record keeping requirements as all other CACFP providers. And this presentation is going to mostly discuss the main differences between child care and adult care, as well as focus on the requirements that produce the most common errors for adult daycare centers. The required record-keeping documents we are going to discuss include menus, production records, receipts, training records, income eligibility forms or IEFs, records of meals served or ROMs, enrollment forms, attendance records, claims, code of conduct form, and just as a reminder that all CACFP records must be kept for 3 years plus the current fiscal year. Any additional questions hopping up in the chat box, Tanya, that you want me to go over?
You're good to go.
Okie dokie, sounds good. We'll keep on checking. All right, so the first thing we are going to discuss is menus and production records. The CACFP requires that all institutions maintain menus for all meals and snacks claimed for reimbursement. The menus are required to be posted where participants and/or guardians can see them. All planned menus for meals and snacks must meet the CACFP meal pattern requirements. And we're going to go over the specific meal pattern requirements for adults later in this presentation. Reimbursement may not be claimed for meals that do not meet the CACFP meal pattern requirement. If substitutions are made to the menu, please make sure that you are documenting these substitutions. And menus are a great way to be creative. It's great when you're able to involve your participants to provide their input on the meals and snacks. If they are invested in, what is being served, they're more likely to consume more of the meals. And it's also important to ensure that you're offering a variety of culturally relevant foods to your participants, as well as ensuring that you're introducing and offering them new and healthy alternatives. And then we do have a menu template that is very helpful to use, and we will go over that in the next slide. Next, we are going to talk about production records. Production records are not required. However, they are a great tool for helping staff, such as your cooks or anyone helping with the food purchasing at your institution, calculate how much food needs to be purchased or prepared to serve the proper portion sizes for all participants. Again, production records are optional, but they're very helpful, especially if you have new staff or if there is a large change in the number of enrolled participants at your center. And we also have an example of a blank production record that we will be showing you. All right, so this is our menu template. So this is available on our website, and it's also a link that Tanya's going to drop for you all in the chat box. So it's a fillable form, so you guys can kind of just click on all the little boxes and it will allow you to type in there. And this kind of helps make sure that you are serving, the required number of components for all the different meals and snacks that you are serving. We have templates that are for if you're serving meals 5 days a week, as well as 7 days a week. And this is our template for production records for adult daycare facilities. The first column on the left lists each required component per meal or snack, as well as the minimum required portion size. The column in the middle allows you to list the estimated number of participants you will be serving for that day, as well as any staff members at your institution that you plan to serve. As a reminder, the staff may consume meals that are prepared for the CACFP with CACFP funds, but you cannot claim these meals for additional reimbursement. And then finally, the person completing the production record will multiply the portion size by the number of estimated meals and calculate how much of each food component to prepare for the meal. If you ever have questions on how to properly use these, reach out to your nutrition consultant and we can kind of walk through some examples with you one-on-one. The food buying guide is a helpful interactive online resource that helps calculate the totals needed to be prepared or purchased on production records or standardized recipes. Tanya's also going to share a link to this resource in the chat box. You are able to create an account for the food buying guide, and then you can save all of the different information that you plug in for future reference, or you can just log in as a guest and kind of just use it for a 1 or 2 time deal and not save anything. The website also has great tutorial videos to help teach you how to get the most out of this calculator. All right, and so many of our adult daycares have food service management contracts and get meals vended from an outside contractor. So we're going to touch base on some key things to remember when getting your meals from a vendor. So if a participating site contracts for meals with an external food service management company or vendor, the company is required to maintain and provide appropriate menus and production records for each meal delivered to the site. And this is agreed upon when the institution and the vendor sign a food service management contract, or FSMC. We also have a link for the chat box for a blank version of this contract, and it's also available on the CNP website. It is required for a copy of these production records to be maintained on file at the institution for a review by the state agency. If the vendor is using a product that requires a CN label, if they are listing a menu item to be meeting whole grain rich criteria, or they are using standardized recipes, the state agency may ask for any of this documentation during a review to ensure that the vendor is maintaining compliance. All right. Finally, we are going to be talking about purchasing standards. Again, adult daycare centers are required to follow the same procurement and purchasing standards as all other participating CACFP providers. Procurement is the process of purchasing goods or services for your institution or center. Procurement standards ensure full and open competition. This means that you are spending the reimbursement funds equitably in your community by shopping at a variety of retailers. Another requirement is that when writing product specifications or bids for services, that specific brands are not listed. And finally, all institutions must operate with no conflicts of interest. This may include doing undisclosed business with the chair of the board of an institution. And then There is a specialized fiscal training available on our website that kind of goes over some more procurement information in more detail. And at the end of this presentation, we'll kind of provide links to a bunch of our different other training resources. All right, so now we're going to talk about food and milk receipts. CACFP regulation requires that all centers maintain documentation of nonprofit food service to ensure that all program reimbursement funds are used exclusively for the food service operation or for the improvement of food service operations. Food receipts are an important piece of documenting for your nonprofit meal service. As a reminder, institutions must maintain receipts for 3 years plus the current fiscal year, and receipts should show all required information. The information required on receipt include the amount of food or milk purchased, the total of the receipt, the date, the food or supplies were purchased. Any CACFP foods should be separated from non-CACFP purchases, such as if you're purchasing, other supplies for, maybe a project at your institution. If they're on the same receipt, you should document that in some type of way. And if there are multiple people in the center doing the food and milk purchasing, ensuring that there are good systems in place to keep track and stay organized with all of the receipts. Best practice is to keep them in a chronological order by date and keep them separated by month. Ensure that food receipts support the food that's listed on the menu for that month. Receipts should also reflect food is purchased that is creditable within the CACFP. And then if you are getting any foods donated to you, you are able to serve those, but you cannot use the value of that food or those items purchased towards your nonprofit meal service. And that those items need to be documented. That way the CACFP can keep track and calculate that food quantity that you're purchasing. There is a template on our website. Tanya, I think I gave you the link for that donated receipt template. If not, we can find it and share it at the end of the presentation too. But it's kind of just like a log that you'll use to keep track of, any milk or food that is donated to your center. All right, so now we're going to talk about civil rights requirements. Again, these are all the same requirements as all other CACFP institutions, but we're going to kind of focus on some of the areas of compliance that tend to result in areas of error for adult daycare centers. So the And Justice for All poster is required to be displayed at all participating institutions and must be displayed in an area that is visible to your participants. The most current version of this poster has a green USDA building on it. So it's this first picture on the slide with the green thumbs up. If your center has a sign that has the Statue of Liberty, that is an outdated version. So please email myself or the main CACFP email or your nutrition consultant. And we can make sure that you get some updated posters. And then this poster is required to be displayed in color, and it must be 11 inches by 17 inches. So, if you go to print it just off of the website, a standard printer paper size is not big enough. It has to be like the big paper, 11 by 17. So just reach out to us and we can make sure that you get some updated posters. Both the ethnic and racial data is required to be collected for enrolled participants. Institutions will use this information to update their online CACFP application during recertification annually. This information may be collected on the IEFs, but it must be documented by the participant or the caregiver. A visual observation by the institution staff is not allowed. The USDA's non-discrimination statement is required to be listed on any CACFP related documents created or distributed by the institution. However, this is not required on menus. On all other documents, the full statement must be used in its entirety, or the use of the shortened statement is intended for limited circumstances, such as if the document is too small for the full statement, like a brochure or a pamphlet. In this case, the institution must request and obtain approval from the CACFP prior to using the shortened statement. So all you have to do is just send that document to your nutrition consultant and we will help make sure that that gets approved for you. The document, the non-discrimination statement must be in the same size font as the rest of the text on the material. And you can find the full non-discrimination statement in both English and Spanish on our website. And since many of our programs provide services to a variety of participants and cultures, oops, that's my alarm to pick up my kid from school, but the grandparents got him today. Many participants enrolled in CACFP may have limited English proficiency or LEP. So in order to comply with civil rights requirements, institutions should have program information available in the languages of their participants. And civil rights training is required annually for all staff with CACFP related duties. We will discuss that more in depth on the next slide. I'm gonna do a quick check-in with Tanya on our chat box. Any other questions we should discuss?
Nope, we're good, Natalie. Thank you.
Okay, of course, thank you. Alrighty, so let's talk about training requirements. So you guys are here, so that's a great step towards meeting the training requirements for CACFP. Adult daycares, again, have the same requirements as all other CACFP institutions. So it is required for all staff with CACFP related duties upon hire and then annually to receive CACFP training. This may include people that are preparing the claims for your institution, cooks, any staff that is serving meals or documenting the ROMs. You know, in the childcare setting, you know, teachers are required to have this training. Proper documentation of this training is also required to be listed on an agenda or other document that includes at least a minimum of the date the training was held, who conducted the training, the list of the topics discussed, and a roster of the attendees. And as a reminder, this training must also include the civil rights information that we discussed. There is an agenda template available on our website, and Tanya's going to drop the link to that in the chat box. And a fairly new resource we have is a PowerPoint that you all can use when you're facilitating this training for your staff, as well as a PowerPoint that is kind of geared more towards the menu planners and chefs at your institutions. So we have links to those direct training resources as well. So the person that is responsible for conducting the training at your institution is required to attend our state CACFP training. It is required that at least one staff member from each institution attends or completes this training prior to providing the training for all other staff members. There are multiple ways to meet this requirement. You can either do it through live Zoom sessions, such as the one that we are in today, We have pre-recorded self-paced modules on CodeTrain. And we also have upcoming in-person trainings that you can attend. All of these meet the training requirements. They all include the same information, just lots of different ways to meet that requirement. And again, at the end of this presentation, we're going to give all of that information to you. And the state training certificates are recommended to renew annually and will expire after 3 years. And as we all know, CACFP is a complicated program, so we encourage you all to participate and attend as often and as large of a variety of trainings as you can. All right, we are going to transition to other record keeping requirements. We're going to talk about income eligibility forms, or IEFs. This is one of our records that looks different for the adult daycare centers. So the requirements for IEFs include distributing the form and the letter to all enrolled participants and ensuring that they are completing a new form annually. Meals cannot be claimed as free or reduced without a complete or valid IEF. All IEFs are required to be determined by the institution, and the determining official should not sign an IEF unless it is complete and correct. Common errors on these forms include using whiteout or pencil. Neither of these are allowed, as the IEF is considered a legal document. And finally, it is important to keep all IEFs confidential. Some additional reminders include that a current and correct IEF is needed to claim all meals in the free or reduced category. If an IEF is expired, all meals for that participant must be claimed in the paid category. If an IEF is incomplete or invalid for any reason, meals for that participant must also be claimed in the paid category. Submitting claims for meal reimbursement should be based on the complete and valid IEFs on file. The USDA releases new reimbursement rates every summer, as well as updated household guidelines. When these are released from USDA, the Colorado CACFP distributes these updated forms to all participating institutions, as well as updates them on our website. A great way to stay organized is to update these forms for all participants at this time each summer, and just kind of, update everybody's form all at the same time. That way you have less expiration dates to juggle. These are always available on our website, and we offer them in multiple languages. I think we're up to 5 languages now, maybe. And we're gonna share this link in the chat box for you all to access all these forms in the variety of languages that they're translated in. So this is the adult daycare IEF for this current fiscal year. This slide shows parts 1 and 2. The most critical pieces in these sections are to ensure that the participant's full name is listed. This is also the name that should be listed on the records of meals served, or ROMs. We will review ROMs further down in this PowerPoint. It's also important that the participant's age is listed. This helps our office determine if a plan of care is required for this participant. The ethnicity and racial data are also required on this form. Again, this must be filled out by the participant or caregiver. It cannot be completed by a staff member. In section 2, the participant may list a Medicaid number, a supplemental security income number, or SSI, or a SNAP, TANF, or FDPIR number. Any of these numbers will automatically qualify the participant to be claimed in the free category. However, it is important that there is a specific number listed, and the person filling out the form doesn't just circle yes or circle Medicaid. in place of the number. It has to have the actual, case number listed on the form to be valid. All right, this slide shows parts 4 and 5 of the IEF. Part 3 of the form is where the income would list, or the participant will list any income for the household if they did not list one of those automatically free case numbers in section 1 or 2. If there is income listed in section 3, then section 4, which is displayed on the slide, is required. And this requires the last 4 digits of the Social Security number of the person signing the form, or the person may check the box if they do not have a Social Security number. If the IEF is determined based on income and section 4 is blank, the IEF is invalid and must be claimed in the paid category. Again, that's only if you're determining the IEF with income and not with a Medicaid or a SNAP number or one of those other allowable numbers. Finally, section 5 requires the participant to sign and print their name and all their other contact information. Lack of a participant's signature deems this form invalid, and the meals cannot be claimed as free or reduced and must be claimed in the paid category until corrected. So on this slide, we have some helpful hints for maintaining and staying organized with your IEFs. Some suggestions include keeping them in a 3-ring binder. Usually I recommend that you have like a page protector in the front with the current income guidelines. It's helpful if the names are alphabetized. We recommend separating IEFs by category, like free, reduced, paid, and then any participants that are withdrawn, in a separate section. We also recommend printing on a different color paper every year. So if you're going to do that kind of annual update every summer where everybody fills the form out at the same time, pick a new color every year. So they say, okay, well, fiscal year 23, we're going to use yellow paper. So in July, everybody's going to get a yellow IEF. And then that way, by the next year, Mr. Smith still has a yellow IEF. It's now the next fiscal year, his is expired. We need to get that updated. So it's kind of just a good visual identifier for when those expire. Similarly, recommending that they're completed every July or August. It's helpful when those new guidelines come out. Keeping them in a locked area helps ensure confidentiality. Ensuring that you're distributing it to all households of your participants. And it is helpful if you're able to print the IEF on front and back. That kind of helps avoiding, if the staples get ripped apart and then you lose the front or the back side and you're not sure which ones go together, helping them print it on front and back kind of helps with organization a little bit. All right, Tanya, I'm just going to keep on going unless you interrupt me with questions. That sound good?
Sounds good.
Okie dokie. All right, so this is the record of meals served template, or ROMs. There are 2 main purposes for the ROMs. First, to allow staff to document the meals served to participants in each dining room or classroom, kind of depending on how your facility is set up, during the time of meal service. And then the ROMs are used again at the end of the month to calculate the total meals for claiming purposes. And so we're going to go over kind of some of the requirements for this form. So ROMs must be documented by visual observation at the time of meal service. This means that a staff member will mark a participant on the ROM only when they are observed participating in the meal service and have all of the required components served to them for that meal type. Eligibility should not be listed on the ROMs until preparing the claim. For example, free, reduced, paid, whatever code that your institution uses, that should not be written on the ROM until the claim is getting prepared. And this helps maintain confidentiality of the participants' income categories. The first and last name listed on the ROM should match the same name on the IEF. Do not use nicknames or abbreviations, or if somebody goes by a different name, maybe a middle name, the name on the ROMs needs to match the name on the IEF. Ensuring that you're keeping a ROM in each dining room or dining area, making sure that they're, filled out for that group of participants. Only mark participant who begins their meal or snack within the contracted meal times. These meal times are listed on your application and they are determined by your institution. Of course, if a participant comes in, maybe they come in late, they had a doctor's appointment in the morning and they're late for breakfast, but they're hungry and there's food available, by all means, you may serve that meal. But if it's after the end of the breakfast time listed on your application, that meal is not eligible to be claimed for reimbursement. It is also important that if you use a computer system, you are still documenting meals with a visual observation during the meal service and not just going based on some automated, who is here today type of a system. And it's also important to ensure that any automated system does not allow counting for more than 2 meals and 1 snack or 2 snacks and 1 meal per participant per day. And meals consumed by staff may be documented, but they may not be claimed for reimbursement. So any adult staff members that are helping your participants, they're allowed to eat the meal that is prepared, but you cannot claim those meals for reimbursement. Next, we're going to talk about attendance records. These must be completed daily by the participant or their guardian or caregiver who is bringing them, or if there's a pickup type service. Best practice is to have participants sign themselves in if they are capable, but if not, making sure you have a designated staff member that can do that and make sure that it's accurate. And you might also develop a system for attendance. All right, next we're going to talk about enrollment verification. So for most of our child care centers, this is a licensing requirement. So this requirement has kind of caused some confusion for our adult daycare centers. So to kind of make that easier for you all, we recently updated our enrollment form. So Tanya, there should be a link for you to drop in the chat box for that. It just makes it a little geared more towards, an adult that may be filling it out for themselves as opposed to the parent of a child. But the enrollment form requirements are the same for adults as they are for children. Institutions are required to track enrollment and eligibility. And to be able to claim for those meals served. The form requires a signature and a date. And the form is allowed to include multiple annual updates on the same form to kind of reduce excess paperwork, but it does need to be signed and dated at least every year to be valid. If there are not enrollment forms for your participants, those meals are not eligible to be claimed at all. So they can't be claimed in any category, free, reduced, or paid. You have to completely cross them off your ROMs, and you cannot claim those meals at all if they either don't have an enrollment form or the enrollment form is expired. And it's also important to verify that the participants that need the plan of care have that in their file, and that is updated annually as well. So this is a picture of our enrollment form example. So this is the updated adult version. And so you can kind of see the different boxes here, how it allows for, multiple annual updates. So this one piece of paper could potentially, suffice for 3 years worth of enrollment form verification, just as long as it's signed and dated every year. All right, so, you know, lots of institutions experience all kinds of changes, but what types of changes in your institution are relevant to notify the CACFP if those changes are happening in your institution? So if your institution is bought, sold, or has any other type of ownership changes, make sure to reach out and let us know. If any of the responsible center staff changes, let us know. We'll help you get that updated on your application. If there's any site changes, addresses, or moves, either temporary or permanent, we need to know. Similarly, if there's any closures or any sites no longer want to claim meals, again, temporary or permanently, please make sure that we know. And if any staff members who have access to the online claiming system, DNP, please let us know so we can deactivate their login and or help create new accounts for any new staff members. And so adult daycare centers are required to get administrative reviews by our team, just as any childcare center would. These are scheduled every 3 years unless you are a very large sponsor. Then those are done every 2 years. Our team is required to do a follow-up whenever a complaint is received. And those, you know, could be at any time unannounced. You know, we kind of come and just make a visit, check on how everything's going. And then during our scheduled compliance reviews, we will review the variety of record keeping requirements we've discussed, such as IEFs, menus, ROMs, attendance records, enrollment records, receipts, labor records, and we will also conduct a meal observation. And we will want to see like your kitchen facility and that type of stuff. We will notify your center at least 3 weeks prior of a specific date of visit. We will also let you know at that time which month we're going to be reviewing so you can collect those documents. And just as a reminder, we may request documents back to October of that fiscal year. You know, so for right now, if we were to come review your center, we would potentially ask for records all the way back to October of 2022 as part of your compliance review. So we're going to discuss some food safety resources. So there are a variety of free or low cost resources to ensure that staff at your center or institution is, you know, preparing food in a safe manner. Tanya, I think there's some links on the page I gave you. Yep, okay, she'll share those with you. And why is food safety so important in CACFP? So adult daycare centers serve meals to one of the members of the high-risk population. So high-risk population includes people that have weakened immune systems, or adults over this age of 65, or pregnant women. You know, so the majority of our centers have, you know, at least some people in one of these categories. And it's also important to note that staff members that are assigned to a specific group of adults, if there's any diapering happening, those adults cannot be involved in preparing food outside of their assigned group. And similarly, the same staff cannot be involved in caretaking of any of the adults and food preparation at the same time to just minimize the risk of any type of contamination. Many adult daycare centers are not licensed like childcare centers are. So, hello? Nope, okay. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, good. Sorry, I thought there was more noise. All right. So sometimes adult daycare centers have a difficult time getting a health inspection. So sometimes the county will require a retail food service establishment. So if you have issues with any type of vet certification or inspection, just reach out. We're kind of able to help give you some resources for that. All right, so we are going to now transition from record keeping over to meal patterns. So again, this is kind of one of the main differences for in CACFP from adults to children. So adults do have their own meal pattern. And all of the CACFP meal pattern are based on food components. And those 5 components are fluid milk, meat or meat alternate, grains, vegetables, and fruits. And through this presentation, we're going to briefly discuss each of these components and discuss the main differences between the adult meal pattern, as well as touching base on some of the common errors found during reviews at adult centers. The minimum portion sizes for all of the CACFP meal patterns are developed to meet the USDA guidelines based on ages. And the meal patterns are also designed to provide at least 2/3 of participants' daily nutrition requirement. All right, so this is the first portion of the meal pattern for adults. This section includes breakfast, lunch, and supper. At breakfast, the following 3 components are required to be served: fluid milk, vegetable or fruit, or portions of both, or a grain. Participants must select at least 1 item from each food component for a meal to be reimbursable. A meat alternate is able to be served in place of a grain up to 3 times per week at breakfast. And some examples of this will be shared specifically as we break down each food component. And then the meal pattern for breakfast and supper are the same. At least 1 food item from each of the 5 components is required. The meal pattern also lists examples of different meat and meat alternates and the minimum portion sizes for each. Please note that peanut, soy nuts, tree nuts, and seeds are allowed to meet no more than 50% of the required portion size for the meat and meat alternate component. A grain, fruit, and vegetable are also required for lunches and suppers. Institutions are allowed to serve 2 vegetables at lunch or supper in lieu of offering a fruit, but are not allowed to serve 2 fruit choices in lieu of offering a vegetable. And offer versus serve is a meal service type that allows participants to have more control over the food components in their meal. And participating in offer versus serve is optional and is only allowed at adult daycare centers and at-risk programs. And we will discuss the offer versus serve meal service requirements once we get through all of the food components. This is the adult snack meal pattern. Snacks are required to include a minimum of 2 different components. Oops. I was trying to admit that person into the waiting room and change the slide. Oh, they're back. There we go. There may be 1 or more food items served from each of the food components, including fluid milk, meat and meat alternate, vegetable, fruit, or grain. Participants must select 2 different components for a meal for the snack to be reimbursable. Similar to lunch and supper, the snack pattern also lists examples of different meat alternate portion sizes. And then some unique scenarios to be aware of when planning snacks include that fruit or vegetable juice cannot be served when the other component being offered is fluid milk. So basically you can't have only juice and milk as your snack, because then that's all liquid, it's all beverages, it's not a creditable snack. Another example would be 2 different food items of the same component. Those will only count as 1 component. So for example, if you're serving carrots and cucumbers as your snack, those would both count as vegetables. So you would still need a second component from a different category in order for that meal to be creditable. There we go. All right, so the first component we're going to talk about is fluid milk. So this slide is taken directly from a USDA resource, and Tanya will share that link with you in the chat box. The CACFP meal pattern requirements are based on the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, which recommends that people over the age of 2 consume fat-free or 1% fluid milk. Therefore, fluid milk served in the CACFP to participants 2 years of age or older must meet this standard. The USDA also understands that adults prefer more flexibility in the meals and beverages they consume. Therefore, adults are allowed to be served yogurt in lieu of milk 1 time per day, as well as allowing milk to be optional at supper for adults only. Another flexibility for adults is allowing flavored milk to be served. The fat content is required to be the same, either fat-free or 1%. However, the milk is allowed to be flavored with syrup, powder, or other methods. Again, flavored milk is only creditable for any CACFP participant over the age of 6. So here's some more information about creditable milk. So the following are allowable milks to be served. So fat-free or 1% cow's milk, skim or 1% reduced lactose, such as Lactaid, skim or 1% buttermilk, goat's milk, or any flavored milk if it meets the required fat content. And then some more information about the yogurt substitution requirements. So a minimum of 6 ounces or 2/3 cup of yogurt must be served to replace the milk component. The yogurt also must meet the sugar limit for creditable yogurt. And yogurt is substituted by the meal, not by the participant. So what that means is you can't allow yogurt to be substituted at every single meal and somehow try to keep track of, okay, Mr. Smith had yogurt this morning, so now he has to have milk at lunch. It has to be kind of across the board. So once a day, the institution may substitute yogurt in place of milk, but it cannot be available all the time for everybody, and they get to pick and choose. It needs to be more controlled than that. So now we're going to go over the requirements for how you're supposed to document that you're serving the correct milk on your menus. So menus must document milk that is served for all meals and snacks. This includes the fat content of the milk and if the milk is flavored or unflavored. It is recommended that you list the milk documentation with a footnote on your menu, because this will kind of just help you save time and space. So it is acceptable to write something on the bottom of your menu, such as all milk served to adult participants is unflavored, low fat, or 1%. Low fat, 1%, or fat-free milk. And then this helps tell our team that all the milk that you're serving meets the specifications required. All right, so now we're going to talk about some milks that are not creditable without additional documentation. So 2% milk of any kind is not creditable for adults. Same with whole milk. And sometimes the lactose-free milk gets a little bit tricky. You have to look really carefully if you're buying lactose-free milk that it is the correct fat content. Sometimes it's harder to find the 1% lactose-free milk, but the lactose-free milk still has to meet the same fat content requirements for the ages that you're serving. Other non-creditable items for fluid milk include rice milk, powdered milk, almond or other nut milk like cashew milk, coconut or oat milk, evaporated milk, sweetened or condensed milk, eggnog, half and half, non-dairy creamer, or water. So none of these items can be served in lieu of milk at a meal or snack unless there is additional documentation on file for that specific participant. And then these are some other non-creditable milk products. So milk is not creditable if it is an ingredient in one of these items. So pudding, ice cream, commercially prepared frozen yogurt, cream soups, sauces, dips, sour cream. These are not creditable as the fluid milk component. So there are some exceptions to the meal pattern. So, you may have some participants that, for a variety of reasons are unable to consume the required fluid milk. There's two different options to use. So there is the milk substitute request form or the special diet statement. We're going to kind of go over the differences of both of those. So the milk substitute request form, so Tanya's got a link that she'll drop for everyone in the chat box. So this is when the participant or the caregiver is requesting a non-dairy substitute just for the milk. But that non-dairy substitute has to meet the same nutrition standards as fluid cow's milk. And many of the non-dairy milk substitutes on the market do not meet these standards. Some soy milks do, but the majority of the rice, coconut, oat, almond, the majority of those do not. So in order to use the milk substitute request form, I'll jump to the next slide. So this is what the form looks like. In order to use this form, it has to meet the nutritional standards that are listed on this form. If they are below, that participant would require a special diet statement, which is on our next slide. So the special diet statement is for any exceptions to the meal pattern, including milk, that may be necessary due to medical or allergy issues. This form is if the substitute the participant is requesting is not creditable in CACFP. The form needs to include the adult's disability and an explanation of how the disability restricts the adult's diet, the major life activity affected by the disability, and the specific foods to omit, and the suggested substitutes. And this form is required to be signed by a medical professional, such as a licensed physician, an advanced practice nurse, a dentist, or a physician's assistant. So this is that other form, so it requires some more detail and information, some more background on your participant, and it must be signed by a medical professional. So this is the form that would be needed if a participant is requesting a milk substitute that does not meet the nutrition standard, such as, almond milk or one of the other ones that doesn't meet it. Or if there is, other type of allergy that you have to adjust the meal pattern for that participant. All right, so for now we're done with milk. We're going to keep going down all of the other food components on the meal pattern. So now we're going to talk about meat alternates. So these are some examples of meat alternates. Eggs, cheese. Please note that if it says cheese food, cheese product, cheese spread, a Velveeta type plastic, not real cheese, those are not creditable. Beans may be creditable if they are dried, canned, or frozen. Yogurt may be flavored or plain, as long as it meets the sugar limit, which we will talk about in the next slide. You may also serve nuts or seeds or tofu to meet the meat alternate component. So now we're going to discuss some sugar requirements for yogurt. This is the same requirement that is discussed in our childcare training. So yogurt must contain no more than 23 total grams of sugar per 6 ounces. So non-commercial or non-standardized yogurts are creditable. But some examples of some kind of yogurt type products that are not allowable are frozen yogurt, drinkable yogurt, homemade yogurt, yogurt covered raisins, yogurt bar type of a things, unless it's exact traditional yogurt in a cup. If it's kind of one of those other type of products, it's not creditable. So now we're going to talk about processed meats. So processed meats include extenders or binders and can be found in the ingredient lists. For examples, it may list a meat or poultry byproduct, a cereal, flour, starch, dried milk, whey, or dried eggs. This means that the product is not 100% meat. This means that it must have a CN or child nutrition label, or some type of specification from the manufacturer stating the portion size and how much it contributes to those specific components. So on this slide, there is an example of the CN label. So this is the very specific format that the CN label is required to be listed in. So it states exactly the portion size. For example, this is a chicken patty, the exact portion size, the 3.2 ounce chicken patty provides 2 ounces of meat and 1 serving of grain for child nutrition programs. These CN labels are very commonly seen in, school meal and school breakfast programs. And so that's why it gets a little confusing for our adult daycare centers, because they're called CN child nutrition labels, but this is still a requirement if you're an adult participating on CACFP. The best way to avoid the headache of finding all of these labels is just to kind of avoid these more processed meats. So this next slide, we're going to go over some examples of products that would require these CN labels. So any type of frozen breaded meat product, such as chicken nuggets, fish sticks, chicken patties, pork patties, etc. Any of those frozen products that are, not 100% meat. They have all kinds of other things added to it. Other examples include sausages, including Vienna sausage, bratwurst. Again, those have lots of added fat, so they're not only not as healthy, but it's very difficult to determine how much meat is actually in that portion size. Pepperoni, bologna, and salami are also included on this list. Hot dogs, including beef, turkey, or chicken, a corn dog, or any type of canned spreadable meat, such as deviled ham, chicken, turkey. Anything that's not 100% meat would require this additional documentation. And an additional requirement is that the Colorado Healthier Meals Initiative requires that these products are served no more than once per week, to kind of help ensure that the reimbursement funds are going towards more whole, fresh food items. All right, so the next component we're going to discuss is everyone's favorite, grains. So at least 1 serving of grain per day must be whole grain rich. Grain-based desserts are not allowed to credit towards the grain component, and we're going to discuss grain-based desserts in more detail. And effective on October 1st, 2021, so been, good 18 months now, it has been required to document all grain portions using ounce equivalent. So some examples of some allowable grains. So in order for a grain to be creditable, it must contain either enriched grains or whole grains. So some common items that don't meet these criteria include tortillas, especially corn tortillas. They are not always enriched or contain whole grain. Pretzels, both the hard and crunchy ones and the soft ones, again, sometimes they're not enriched. And then the vegetable straw stick type products, those typically do not contain a grain. They're usually made with like potato flour. A potato is a vegetable, not a grain, so those are not creditable in CACFP. If you ever have any questions about your menu or any of the products you're serving, you can always reach out to your nutrition consultant, send them pictures, send them your menu. We're happy year round to kind of give you feedback on those things, because all types of new products are coming out on the market all the time. Manufacturers are getting smarter about confusing consumers of what types of products they're actually buying. So we're always happy to kind of help you navigate that, because it's confusing for us too. All right, so we're gonna briefly touch on whole grain rich, and then again at the end of the presentation, we'll share lots of our other trainings and resources that go into all of these topics much more in depth. But all CACFP institutions are required to serve one whole grain rich item per day. So if you are only serving one meal per day and it requires a grain, that grain must be a whole grain. Or if your program is only serving a snack and a grain is one of the two components, that grain must be whole grain rich. Again, we're always happy to check your menus out to make sure that you're meeting these requirements. So now we're going to talk about grain-based desserts. So this can be a little confusing, especially for our adult daycare centers. A lot of these, kind of sneak into the menus. And unfortunately, these are not creditable as part of CACFP. So basically, any type of grain item that has things that are added to make it sweeter or to be viewed more as a treat or a dessert, those are not creditable. So some examples include sweetened popcorn, such as kettle corn, chocolate drizzled corn. And kind of one of the main confusing things is bars of any kind are considered a grain-based dessert. So a cereal bar, breakfast bar, granola bar, even if it kind of has the name like breakfast biscuit, those are all considered in our program a grain-based dessert. It's a grain with added sweeteners, added sugar, and it's viewed more as a treat and not providing, the nutrition that, our populations that we serve need the most. Some more obvious examples include cookies, pastries, cinnamon rolls, cakes, donuts, those types of things. Pie crust, if it is a dessert type item, is not creditable. Pudding, including rice pudding or bread pudding or any other milk-based pudding, is not creditable. The only exception to this list is if there is a savory pie crust, such as like a pie crust that is used for like a chicken pot pie, or if there is a bread pudding that is like an herb and cheese type savory bread pudding, those would be creditable because they're not full of all those added sugars and sweeteners. Again, if you find a product and you're kind of confused about it, reach out to your nutrition consultant and we'll kind of help you navigate if it's allowable or not. So if you find that you do have some of these items on your menu, this slide includes some great options of things that are allowable. So this is your green thumbs up page. Muffins, quick breads, such as zucchini bread, banana bread, pumpkin bread, pretzels, as long as it is enriched or a whole grain, animal crackers, graham crackers, pancakes and waffles, which are allowed to be served with syrup, fish-shaped crackers, cheddar crackers, any type of other savory type cracker. All right, so now we're going to dig into fruits and vegetables, the rainbows of the earth. Vegetables may be served fresh, frozen, or canned. So lots of options, especially, you know, with the high cost of food right now, kind of getting into some of these more affordable options, especially when it's, you know, not quite spring and summer, when some of those produce prices go down. Leaning into some of those, you know, frozen canned options is a great way to go. Making sure that you're draining your vegetables before you portion them out helps you get an accurate serving size. Making sure that leafy greens, you're serving twice the portion to get the right portion size. So for example, a cup of lettuce is actually only credits as a half a cup of vegetable, just because it's so fluffy that you can't really like mash it down into the cup. So 1 cup equals a half a cup for any of those leafy green items. Some of these this is a great time that the food buying guide comes in. It kind of helps you navigate some of those portion sizes. Beans are allowed to credit as a vegetable when they are not being counted as a meat alternate at the same meal or snack. So for example, if you're serving black bean tacos, the black beans cannot count as your meat alternate and your vegetable in the same meal. It has to be one or the other. And as a reminder that potatoes are a vegetable, this gets confusing because potatoes, you know, are viewed as a carbohydrate, and so often they are confused for a grain, but potatoes of any kind are considered a vegetable, and any home canned products are not creditable. So, you know, if you have summer tomatoes and you're making tomato sauce, you cannot can that and serve that to your participants. It must be, you know, commercially bought at a store or by a food service vendor. All right, so now we're going to talk about fruit. So again, fresh, frozen, canned, dried, all great options for fruit. Dried fruit requires half of the portion size to be creditable. So if you think about grapes versus raisins, you know, raisins are much more condensed. So dried fruit only requires half the portion size. So a 1/4 cup of dried fruit would actually count as a half cup. 100% juice is allowed to be served no more than once per day. And we're going to talk about juice more in depth now. So as long as it's 100% fruit or vegetable juice, that is allowed. Again, no more than once per day. And 100% juice blends are allowed. So if it's a blend of like fruit and vegetable juice, that is okay. It just cannot credit as both the fruit and vegetable at the same meal. You would credit the juice for whichever component is the most prominent in the product, and you would determine that by whichever product is listed on the ingredient list first. If that's a fruit, you would count it as a fruit. If it's a vegetable, you would count it as a vegetable. So if it's like pineapple carrot juice and carrot juice is the first ingredient, carrot vegetable, it counts as a vegetable. All right, so we're going to talk about water. So water is very important to the populations that we serve. However, it cannot be served in lieu of milk for breakfast, lunch, or supper. Water is not a creditable component. It is a great option that you serve with 2 other components during a snack, and it should be made available throughout the day. It just cannot be served in lieu of milk at one of those other meals. And if you have any my picture kind of cut off my words here a little bit on the slide, but if you have any non-verbal participants, make sure that your staff is offering them water regularly in case they're unable to ask for it themselves. All right, so now we are going to dig into some meal service types and the different requirements. Pre-plated meal service, you know, is if all foods in the required portions are served to each participant. This would also require you to pour the entire portion of milk all at once into 1 cup. So that cup has to be large enough to hold the full 8-ounce portion for these participants. And then adults do not have a choice in the food components or the portion sizes on their meal. They're kind of just given all of the required items, and then they choose how much they wish to eat. Another option that is only available for adult centers is offer versus serve. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And for all meal service types, portion control is decided by whoever is serving it. So if the staff member is serving it, they have to serve the minimum portion size, or if the participant is serving themselves, they're choosing the portion size. All right, so this slide is taken directly from a USDA handout that Tanya's going to share with you all. So some more information about offer versus serve. So this says that, there's, I'm just going to go to the next slide because it kind of breaks it down by meal. It's a little easier to visually explain it all. So the way offer versus serve works kind of varies by the meal that you're serving. So if you're doing offer versus serve at breakfast, the institution's job is to offer the 3 food components required at breakfast. As a reminder, those required components are milk, fruit or vegetable, and a grain. So the institution must offer at least 4 different food items at breakfast and at least 1 item from each food component. The 4th item can come from the vegetable, fruit, grains, or the meat alternate category. And then the child or adult is required to choose at least 3 different food items. So a lot of times at our adult centers, they offer a big variety of different breads, fruits, vegetables, lots of different meats at breakfast. So by doing offer versus serve, this allows the participants not to have to take one of every single thing that the institution is serving, but the institution is required to make sure that they are serving enough variety that each participant is still getting the minimum portions, minimum number of components and the minimum portion sizes required. Gets a little complicated. Again, your nutrition consultant is always kind of happy to work through some of these things with you. But this resource is really a great visual tool to kind of see, like this first blue box, you see that there's 4 different food choices, but the adult is required to pick 3. And so 3 components is what's required on the breakfast meal pattern. So they're still getting the minimums. They just have a little bit more say in what they're actually picking. For breakfast and supper, or I'm sorry, for lunch and supper, it's slightly more simple. So the institution must offer at least 5 food components. So milk, vegetables, fruit, grains, and meat alternate. They have to have at least all 5 of those options for the adults. The adults, however, are able to choose at least 1 food item from each component, and they may take 3 or more. So in this kind of purple box, you see that they're offering milk, carrots, bananas, chicken, and bread. And this adult selected 3 of those different food components to get their creditable meal. The next slide, we're going to talk about, oh, no, we're not talking about snack yet. So again, this type of meal service is optional. It is a little bit more confusing, but sometimes the flexibility is nice for the adult participants. Offer versus serve is not allowed at snack because snacks only require 2 components. So you must make sure that the participants are taking both of those components that are offered. And this does not affect reimbursement. So just because you offer a bigger variety of different foods, you don't necessarily get more reimbursement for that. It's kind of just all the same across the board. And it's important that the state agency is notified if you're doing offer versus serve, because it is more complicated and we want to make sure that we're supporting you and you're doing it properly. And you may offer the food in pre-portioned or kind of like a direct buffet type meal service. So here's kind of an example of offer versus serve at breakfast. So this institution is serving berries, grapefruit, pancakes, and milk. So you can see that there's 4 different food items listed there, but they are serving all 3 of the required components. They've got their milk, they got their grain, and they have their fruit. So as long as the participant is taking at least 1 item from the 3 required components, those meals are creditable. Some examples of creditable combinations would be you know, milk, berries, and pancakes, grapefruit, pancakes, and milk, etc. So something that they would not be allowed to decline is if you have a combination food item, such as a burrito, that is meeting more than 1 of the food components. The participant would not be able to decline that component. So for the menu listed on this page, this institution is serving milk, a burrito that has eggs. So this is their grain and their meat alternate, and then oranges. So if the burrito was declined by the participant, they would lose out on the grain and the meat alternate. So their meal would not be creditable if they only took a milk and an orange. They would only have 2 of what they would need. So here is some examples of some lunch and supper offer versus serve. So at least 1 food item from the required 5 food components must be served, such as milk, meat alternate, vegetable, fruit, grain. And a participant must take at least 3 different food components in order for their meal to be creditable. So here are some examples. So the menu for this day is chicken, broccoli, mango, pasta, and milk. So it's got all their 5 different components listed there. So some combinations that would be allowable based on this menu would be chicken, mango, pasta, broccoli, pasta, milk, Parmesan chicken, pasta, milk. So they have, you know, 3 different components for each of those examples, so they meet the minimum meal pattern requirements. All right, so I know that is all a lot of information, but that's why we've saved the last portion to kind of go over any specific examples you have. And I'm also going to share, and I'll go ahead and drop this. So all of these links, oops, hold on. The training links don't want to work. So I'll work on that here for a second, but I will send all of this upcoming training information to you all. So we're gonna have in-person trainings, which is like an 8-hour all-day course. It goes over all of this information way more in depth. So we'll have 2 in the Denver area, May and July. We have 1 in Pueblo in June, and we are hosting 1 in Grand Junction in August. And you can always view our pre-recorded self-paced modules on CoTrain at any time, and you can watch those as many times as you want. We know this is a lot of confusing information. And then we also have additional supplemental training videos that go over some additionally specialized topics of CACFP. We have one about fiscal, we have one about being a sponsor, we have one about infants, we're going to be adding this one about adults. So lots of training resources available. So now we're going to jump into our question and answer, and I'll get all these training registration links to drop for you guys too. So ask questions in the chat box. Feel free to unmute. Whatever works best for you all. I am also going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see all your faces again. Or at least your names. Oh, there's a couple faces still. Hello. All right, and I see the question in the chat box about the PowerPoint. I am just gonna send the PowerPoint and like all the links and everything. I'm just gonna send it to everybody that participated today. Just that way you guys all have it in case you need it. And I'm also gonna be sending out a survey about this training. You know, we kind of skipped doing the pre and post test since this was going to be like a smaller group. But we do want to send a survey to you all to kind of just collect your feedback, what you found was the most helpful, how we can continue to support you all in the future, those types of things. So you guys will, everyone will get an email with all of the information. So. Yes, the recording will also be available. It will go out next week in the Bits and Bytes. And it will be added to our website and all the things. So yes, we will. That's why we recorded to share it. So yep, good question. I'm gonna try this. Oh, why? Okay. These in-person ones do not want to copy for me very nicely. You guys must have drilled Tanya while I was talking if nobody has any questions for us.
I have a question, I guess.
Yay!
Yay! I work at a sponsor of centers, so I'm not the center myself.
Okay.
And my question is related to the enrollment forms for adult participants. At the sponsor level, we don't collect the enrollment forms for every single person. We do collect the income eligibility. So I just want to confirm, would that be a similar verification at the time of a site review? We generally would look at 10% of those. For example, if a program had 100 enrollees, we would randomly select 10 participants and make sure that they have an enrollment in their folder for the current year, or is there a different expectation there for us?
Natalie, you want me to take this? Okay. You want to start talking if you're going to talk. So thank you for the question, Maureen. So at a sponsor level, it's basically just whatever your procedures are. That is what we do. If we were to show up and do a site visit, we would look at 10% of the enrollment forms and choose those to look at. So if you're comfortable with just choosing 10% to do your verification, that's totally fine.
All right, I have another one.
Okay.
The individual care plans for those folks who are less than 60 years old. A similar question. I've made sure with our adult programs that we are only allowing them to claim meals for those under 60 when we have that care plan. However, as we approach that renewal with that center, I just want to make sure that I have proper protocol in place so that when they get to that expiration date of the signed care plan, would I need to potentially disallow meals if I have not gotten that renewal?
Mhm.
Because basically I haven't had a verification similar to a special diet statement, whether or not that participant is still eligible to participate under 60 years old.
Yes, correct.
Okay, great.
You're doing great, Maureen.
I have a question. So my question is about the civil rights training, because I saw the link, and as you're going through, I'm clicking on the links to see what questions I have. It tells about materials, but I know you had said something that you need to take a certification because I'm the director, but I didn't see where that was in the link that you provided. So I just want to make sure I'm on the right page.
Oh, sure. So the link,
It took me to the materials. Is it just that we
Uh-huh.
read it and sign off on it? But you all had said something about a training, so I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything.
yeah, so if you go to that link, it's got one that you can use for your staff, and then it's got a supplemental guide for the director. Are you seeing that on that page?
And I saw the page that has it, so I'm looking at it and it says training templates. So I'm on the main page where the link goes to, it says civil rights materials. And then
Correct.
it has English, it has all of that, but I didn't see the training. It says staff training template, but is it just that I read it and sign off that I took the training from the reading?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
So
that's
this
why I
is-
just want to make sure.
Yeah, so this is meant to make it super easy for you to train your
So
staff.
once
as
I
they-
do that.
Yeah. Mhm. And you
Okay,
keep it
so
on
once I
file.
read off on it, I send it into who I work with as my representative, I guess. Send it to her. She says, yes, I'm good. And then I can train my staff on it, correct?
You would just keep it on file. You don't need to send it
Okay.
to your consultant.
Okay, so then
Yeah.
I do it, just give it to them. Now, do I have to give it to all of my staff or just my kitchen staff and the ones that are working on the ROMs and things of that nature?
Anyone that has anything to do with the CACFP.
Okay, and that's the one I need to do yearly?
Mhm.
Okay, just want to make sure I had all the bases covered, so I did it correctly. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so some of the links I just shared were ridiculously long, but hopefully they all work. And again, I'll send that all in my follow-up email too, but this should take you to the links to register for any of the in-person trainings, as well as watching the pre-recorded versions of all of this information, and then our kind of specialized topics, supplemental training videos. There's a direct link to that too. So if any of the links end up not working for you, just let us know. Because technology is not always our friend. We try, but it doesn't always like to be our friend. All right. Any other questions? Thank you for attending today. And you all will get a training certificate for this. Since it's a small group, I'm just going to create those manually. So if you don't see it for like about a week, don't worry. But if it's been like longer than a week, just feel free to reach out to me, just to make sure like it didn't get lost in space somewhere. So if you think of any other questions, again, reach out. We're here to help you. This world is ever changing for all of us. So we're here to help you guys figure out how to do the great hard work that you do in your centers every single day. We're grateful to have you participating. So unless anyone has any questions, feel free to enjoy a couple minutes back in your day. Go catch some vitamin D outside while the sun is still shining. And we'll see you all soon.